Today I'm going to open the topic of Bhaja Govindam, and it looks like a smaller creation of Shankaracharya, but amazing as it is, it's a brilliant exponent as Adi Shankaracharya was. This is one of his most important works for average people like us, who are sansaris. He succeeded in teaching the fundamentals of Vedanta in just a few simple and practical verses. He pointed out our fallacies and wrong outlook for our life. It dispelled our ignorance, cleared our delusions, and awakened us to pursue the essential goal of this precious human birth, to know our true nature and thus being enlightened. Each one of us, we can sing those melodious verses and follow his advice every day. The popular story goes like this. Most of you know, but it's good to recap. Adi Shankaracharya, while returning back from his daily bath in the sacred Ganges at Banaras, overheard an old Pandit, Sanskrit scholar, repeating the aphorism of the grammarian Panini and Pandit's futile effort put forth as the intellectual accomplishments to be admired by the society. Feeling that this old Pandit in his twilight of his existence was wasting his time as a human being without realizing the spiritual unfoldment in him, this brilliant enlightened teacher burst forth with his beautiful and melodious fountain of spiritual knowledge. The first verse is the chorus, a call to pray to Lord Govinda, followed by 12 powerful verses where the enlightened Shankaracharya expounds the most critical lessons from Vedantic wisdom. Subsequent 14 verses were composed by each of his 14 disciples who were accompanying him on that pilgrimage. Thoroughly pleased by the accurate understanding of the teachings of Vedanta that disciple showed, the master teacher gave his heartfelt blessings with some additional words of wisdom in the concluding 4 verses. That's how it came about, 31 verses of Bhaja Govindam. At this point in human history, about 1200 years ago, if you can call it, people were mired in confusion and misconceptions about religion and the scriptures. There are many schools of philosophy present, and common man was unclear about the teachings, real teaching of the scriptures. The distortions, different interpretations, the value of rituals, and people were distressed with practices which involved sacrifice of animals, etc. There was also confusion regarding, as Rajagopalacharya describes, confusion regarding the most effective path to be pursued for liberation among the students, scholars, and even teachers of Vedanta. Many scholars felt that Jnana Marga, liberation to the pursuit of knowledge, was distinctly separate from Bhakti Marga, liberation through the attitude of devotion and activities thereby. In reality, when the knowledge gained from scriptures through one's intelligence matures through the life experiences and lodges securely in the heart, it becomes wisdom. When this wisdom is then integrated in our daily life, which then results in unselfish action such as service of the needy, it becomes a true devotion. Thus, the knowledge which has matured is spoken of as devotion. The knowledge does not get transformed into devotion. Such knowledge is nothing but useless tinsel. To hold on to the false notion and announce that jnana and bhakti, or knowledge or devotion, are different from each other is really to expose one's ignorance. Sri Krishna says in the 16th verse of the 7th chapter, He's telling to Arjuna, the people given to good actions, Sukruti no Arjuna, who worship me are fourfold. Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana. Who are those? The distressed artho, the seekers of security artharthi, the one who decides on me jidnyasu, and most importantly, the one who truly knows me. Chaturvidha bhajante mam janaha sukrito jana arto jidnyasu artharthi jnani cha bharatarshava. So this I will be a starting point. I'm not going to do more than a couple of verses today, but there'll be a lot of stories which will come along, which I hope you like. So those who know the verses can join me in singing together. Kumar, help me. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Muramate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nai Nai Rakshati Dukrun Karne, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Muramate. It doesn't matter how terrible the voice is, the words are very important. To translate in English, worship Govinda, worship Govinda, worship Govinda. Oh, a deluded one, Mudamate. When the appointed time comes, that means time of death, samprapte, the knowledge of rules of grammar will not surely save you. You take one word at a time, because I like to study and teach Sanskrit. Bhaja, that means worship. Mudamate. He's calling him, hey fool. That means a better translation would be one who is lost or deluded and is not even aware of that. That's really Muda. That means if you know that you don't know, that's good. But if you don't know that you don't know, that's really bad. So that is Mudamate. The old Pandit thought that he was doing the right thing by reciting Panini's grammar rules. Seeing him, Shankara decided it was necessary to draw his attention to the realities of life. Samprapte, when time comes. Sannihite, that means appointed, that means presence near off. Kale, that means the time or the lord of death. Nahi, certainly never, surely never. Rakshati, saves. Everyone wants to be saved from death. Everyone wants to live forever. Dukrun karne. It's a grammar rule. Comes from the verb called kru, that means to do. This aphorism in the dhatu pada, dukrun, that means to do. If you don't want to, I'm going to bore you a little. Chaklu pachmucharich, which this is how we used to sing to remember various verbs in Sanskrit language when we are learning. That's the dhatu pada that you sing. The Pandit had misunderstood that the mastery over one of the 6 Vedangas, one of them is grammar, will give him the protection. There are 6 Vedangas. There are 4 Vedas, everybody knows that. Sometimes people don't remember what the 6 Vedangas are. Grammar is one. Second one is Chanda. That means meter, prosody. The third one is Shiksha, that is phonetics, the pronunciation. Fourth one is Nirukta, etymology or explanation of the meanings and origin of the words. The fifth is Kalpa, that means ritual instructions, standardizing the procedures for Vedic rituals, such as rites of passage, sanskaras. And finally, Jyotish, astrology and astronomy. Now, protection that is talked about here is from the death itself. No one likes death. Death represents one's grief, sorrow, sufferings, isolation, and fear. Every person in life, if we analyze thoughtfully, is exactly for that protection. We as human beings have a natural love for life, for immortality. Mastery over Vedangas can lead one to the state of liberation was such a misunderstanding, even among the accomplished scholars as sage Narada, in case you might remember the story. If you don't, I'll remind you. The story told in Chandogya Upanishad. When, having studied so many different subjects and mastered them, he still didn't find the ultimate happiness and answer. So he was told to go and visit Sanat Kumar, who was an enlightened individual of his times. He begged him for initiation into that true knowledge. Sanat Kumar asked, appropriately, tell me all that you already know, so that I will instruct you in what you do not know. Narada thereupon, with a great pride, blurted out a long list of subjects that he had mastered. That included several types of sciences, including astrology, literature, art, music, dance, and all different Vedangas. It's interesting that he spent a lot of time prominently mentioning grammar. The enlightened Sanat Kumar, he was expecting to give him a pat on his back, so wonderful. He said, yeah, that's great, but all these are simple names and of very limited value. You have missed the most important. The infinite, or Bhumaha, has to be realized for moksha, freedom, and liberation. It exceeds all these. All other sciences are not as important. It's interesting that Narada himself was confused that grammar was that important. Now he's calling him Mudamati. Mudamati is the word. How do you divide that? Mudamati is the individual whose mati or perception is deluded. He's the one who does not know what he's seeking and is therefore not aware of the real purpose of life. That means not only doesn't know, he does not know that he does not know. The one who has discrimination called viveka, seeing the thing for what it is. The opposite of discrimination is aviveka, a lack of discrimination, that is moha or delusion. Also called adhyasa, that means superimposition, which results in seeing something where it is not. In Sanskrit is called atasmin tad buddhi. That means you see something where it is not. Atasmin tad buddhi. In Vedanta, moha is seeing that which is not there, or seeing something to be different, that is what is exactly in reality. Taking a rope for a snake, or seeing happiness where it is not. In the same way, seeing impermanent as permanent is delusion, and taking permanent to be impermanent is also delusion. Professor Rambachan started discussing last time Nirvana Shadak. That's exactly what I was trying to emphasize. We tend to call the impermanent, or body, mind, and intellect as permanent and confuse it with soul, but that is a delusion. Seeing non-self as the self is a delusion, as surely as seeing the self as non-self. That's what he was emphasizing last time. Therefore, the true purpose of life is gaining freedom from moha, delusion. These 31 verses are known as Bhaja Govindam, since the first verse starts with those key words, Bhaja Govindam. That's often for many of the Upanishads. For example, Ishavasya Upanishad starts with Ishavasyam idam sarvam kenopyam keneshitam patati preshitam manaha and Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. All these important scriptures start with the first couple of words of that particular beautiful writing. The original name, I was mentioning the Prasanna before we started today, was known as Moha Mudgar. Mudgara means a mallet, in hammer in Sanskrit, and Moha means delusion. So here Shankaracharya delivers some forceful strokes of the mallet in order to arouse us out of the delusion and restore our proper consciousness to most of us who are lost in life. I don't know how many, but I'm sure I had enough hits on my head during my early school years because I was not listening to the teacher properly. Now he says, Govinda, Bhaja Govindam is what? Govinda is the person, but Govinda is our own Atman, the self. The word Govinda stands for Lord Vishnu or Brahman. Prasanna knows, he's listening. He's discussed Vishnu Sahasranam in our old temple. Govinda is 187th and 539th word in Vishnu Sahasranam. If you want to translate 187th word, the reclaimer of the earth, hidden in the depths of ocean. I'll tell you the story a little later. And 539, that means known through the scriptural texts. That's the meaning of Govinda. Name for Lord Vishnu. Bhaja Govindam means worship Govinda. Govinda is that freedom that will give you the protection that you're seeking. You deluded fool, that's what Shankaracharya is telling you. That freedom is the immortality, protection from death. Govinda here represents Lord Krishna, the complete incarnation of Lord Vishnu. We'll talk about incarnation some other time. Some of them part, some of them complete, some of them of this kind. But Shri Krishna is called complete incarnation of Vishnu. The reason I love Sanskrit is because every word has more than one meaning. We talked about Govinda here as Shri Krishna. Go here means cow. Govinda means one who protects cows. Gam Vindatiti Govinda. That means he is the cowherd. Other word for meaning is go also means Prithvi or earth. So Govinda is the one who finds, knows, and protects earth. In this incarnation as Varaha or boar, it said that Hiranyaksha, the Asura, took the earth into Rasatala and waters. When earth disappeared, the people were distressed and approached Lord and asked him to rescue the earth. So the Lord appeared as Varaha and battled the mean Asura Hiranyaksha, killed him, brought the earth back to the waters. Lord Krishna is thus Govinda, the retriever of the earth. In other words, Govinda is the substratum upon which the world play goes on. Govinda, the Lord of cattle, is not simply a divine cowhead of the Gokul, but also is a life-giving factor behind all emotions and passions and the very essence of all living entities in the world. Go doesn't stop here. Go can also be taken to mean sense organs. Govinda then is the one who impels sense organs, the one who enlivens, that is Chaitanya. The sense organs are the ones who direct the sense organs to perform the appointed functions. Swami Vidyadharma, also a follower of Swami Dayananda, gave a perfect example of an electric fan. He says here, we can see the rotations of the fan blades, but not the electricity which causes it. That means energy or Chaitanya that allows us to operate our sense organs or organs of action you cannot see. Similarly, you can observe the functioning of our organs of action or organs of perception, but while we may not be able to perceive it, is the Govinda who enables these various faculties to perform various functions, such as in Kenopanishad says. I won't bore with you, it's about fifth verse, first one. May you understand that Brahman is that awareness, consciousness, which is not revealed by speech, but by which consciousness of speech is revealed. The deity which is meditated upon by the people is not that Brahman. So he is describing it. Somebody is praying on a particular deity, he says, Yad vachanda abhyutkam yena vaga buddhyate tadeva brahmatvam viddhi nedam yadidupas. The self that is Govinda is that which cannot be revealed by speech, but because of which consciousness, awareness, the speech is revealed. Then we can proceed to include all other sense organs and perception such as eyes, ears, and so on, including the mind. So Govinda cannot be thought of by mind, but because of which mind thinks. And finally, Go also means speech. In this sense, Govinda means the one who is behind all the speech, who confers the speech, very power behind which all creatures, through the medium of speech, convey the knowledge to each other. If Go is taken as the meaning of speech, that means all the Vedas were revealed by Govinda. Thus, Govinda is not limited to Lord Krishna. In a broad sense, it means the self, the truth, or the consciousness. That's why Shankaracharya says, you may worship Govinda with not simply yourself, but self of all. Now, the story of Hanuman is very illustrative in this situation. After triumphantly returning back to Ayodhya, Rama and Sita had gone out for a walk, and as usual, Hanumanji was trailing behind them. Sita looked behind and was so pleased by his devotion. She took a pearl necklace from her neck and offered it to Hanuman out of love. Later on, she noted that he was cracking pearl one by one, and after looking inside, throwing it away. Which she asked, puzzled as she was, about his actions. He replied, you know what? I'm only interested in Rama. When the open pearl shows no Rama, that pearl was no longer important to me. He was seeking only Rama. And here in this particular scripture, Shankaracharya is teaching us, suggesting seek Govinda, Krishna, a complete incarnation of Vishnu. Every human being wants to live forever, have the sense of liberation from any sense of shortcomings, and have a contented life full of joy and happiness. It means we all are seeking Satchit Ananda. Immortality, one, consciousness or awareness, yes, but happiness and eternal. That means what we're looking at is life with no sense of limitations, overflowing with joy and happiness, as we remain in total awareness, existing eternally. Adi Shankaracharya, in his opening powerful statement, reminded every one of us and the Sanskrit teacher who was memorizing the Panini Sanskrit grammar that one should not waste one's precious time in this human life, Panushyatvam, in mere grammar hunting or any such unprofitable pursuit of secular knowledge, which merely lead to material possessions of fleeting joys and pleasures. Instead, each one of us should seek identity with Govinda, the highest reality that pervades the entire universe. The life of existence is mumukshutvam, be liberated from the unending cycles of birth, growth, decay, disease, death, and rebirth. That is mumukshutvam. Bear with me my terrible voice in singing. Mudha jahi, Kumar Jankar. Mudha jahi janagama trishnam, kuru sadvidyam manasi vitrishnam, yallavase nija karmotpatam, vittam tena vinodaya chittam, bhaja govindam, bhaja govindam. Keyword is bhaja govindam. That one, may you give up your craving for accumulation of wealth, and may you contemplate upon Govinda in your mind, free from craving. Make your mind happy with whatever wealth is obtained through your honest efforts, or we should say, other way, or deluded one, give up your thirst or attitude to possess material wealth. Instead, create in your mind the inspiring thoughts of reality or divinity, and keep the mind devoid of any passions of material possessions. Whatever you see as the reward of your hard work in life and lives before, be happy, satisfied, and content. Again, Buddha means we talked about deluded one. Dana agama trishna. Thirst or craving for material wealth, worldly objects of possession. The possessor vainly feels a temporary high of great satisfaction when you get the wealth. Jehihi, give up. Vitrishnam, free of thirst or craving, not wanting anything. That means you are completely satisfied or content. Nija karma utpatam, obtained by your honest effort. Vittam, wealth or reward. Vinodaya, that means entertain, make yourself happy or be cheerful. Tena, that means by that, they say, original word is tat, is a third case or instrumental, tena, and chittam, that is your mind. Adi Shankaracharya calls us for what we are, mudamate, deluded, and then advises us that we should cleanse our mind of lust for objects, wipe our minds of greed for possession, and overcome in our mind the attachment for wealth. Instead, we should remain thoroughly satisfied, totally contented with whatever we receive through honest and hard work in this life, and of course past life as well, and the mental frame of wanting nothing more. What he's emphasizing is the greed of the human beings is a significant obstacle in the path of worship. Man not only wants wealth, but also wants to accumulate it. What he's telling us is there is no grudge against wealth in the statement. We do indeed require wealth to provide our basic necessities, such as food, shelter, and clothing. We also need wealth to fulfill our responsibilities to our family, both nuclear as well as extended. Without money, day-to-day life cannot be just sustained. But what this brilliant teacher of Vedanta, Shankaracharya, is criticizing is the craving for money or our never-ending thirst for money. This thirst or trishna for accumulating wealth is destructive. It totally exhausts our energy because we are never satisfied, never free from this desire, this thirst. Now it's kind of interesting verse. Shaivites sing it differently and Vaishnavites sing differently. But here it goes. Nisvo yekashatam shati dashashatam laksham sahasradipa lakshesho kshiti palatam kshiti patischa keshavat sampat chakresha punarindritam surapatir brahmaspadam vanchati brahma vishnu padam harir harapadam trishnavodhim kokata. I'll translate in English. The one has no money wants $100, $100. One who's got 100 wants 1,000. One who's got 1,000 wants 100,000. One 100,000 wants to be a king. The king wants to be sovereign of the entire world. So the entire world wants to be Indra, the king of the heaven. Indra wants to be Brahma. Brahma wants to be Vishnu. Vishnu wants to be Shiva. Who has ever heard end of any kind of craving? Only difference between Shaivite and Vaishnavite is Vishnu comes before Shiva in the Shaivite tradition. They flip-flop the position, Hara Harir Pade in Vaishnavite tradition. The key is, with this kind of thirst, poor understanding, not being contented, your desire drives you endlessly, it wipes you out. Now, this contentment is critically important for spiritual growth. If you remember the main story of Kathopanishad, pleased with the attitude and sacrifice of Nachiketa, Yama, the god of death, offers him 3 boons. Bright young boy, Nachiketa, his first boon, he asked for the welfare of his father, who got angry with him, but he wanted to make sure that his welfare was maintained. As the second boon, he asked for welfare of the society. And the third boon, he asked for the knowledge of the self. If you remember, he's asking questions. Some people say it dies, some people say it never dies. Tell me about self. To check if this boy knew the value what he was asking for, He offers him all kinds of attractive gifts, including the wealth, the kingdom, the horses, elephants, gold, diamonds, all different valuable things of his times. This child prodigy of Nachiketa expressed exactly the same feeling to Lord Yama. Navitena tarpani yo manusya. What am I going to gain from all that? I would just like to gain the true knowledge of the self. Man is never satisfied with his possessions alone, he says. Shankaracharya states in the 7th verse of Vivek Chudamani exactly the same. Deathless and imperishable can never be hoped to gain through any possession of wealth alone. Amrutatasya nashasti vittaneya hi shruti. Shankaracharya says there is no hope for amrutatva by means of wealth. Immortality is only a limited understanding of word amrutatva in this case. If somebody has interest in learning more about it, you can ask me that question at the question and answer session. Despite this, this man ceaselessly craves for money and more money without any end. We must conquer the lust for money and instead rest contented and at peace. That's what Shankaracharya said. What I mentioned that immortality is only a limited understanding of Amrutattva. What I'm referring to is immortality comes at the time of death. You don't die. But immortality has to be within your living life as well. You have to remain as vibrant, as positive, as understanding as you living without any death. So it is little. If you Amrutattva is equal to you do not die, then you have missed the point. I mean, you have to be happy in everything that you do in our life, and that is the Amrutattva. Now, sage Yajnavalkya in Brahmavrat Aranya Upanishad exactly with the same message in the second line of the very first verse of the Ishavasya Upanishad. I'm sorry, I said Bruhana, I mean Ishavasya Upanishad. He said, Tena tyaktena bhunjita ma gruda kasya sveddanam. Renounce and enjoy, covet not others' wealth. The teacher never says that one should not enjoy the fruits of one's labor, but that we should indeed do so to the heart's content, but only after following the moral laws laid down by the parents, teachers, and Shastras. Despite our hard work and sincere efforts, we must always be cognizant of the fact it is the divine grace that we succeed. We are so fortunate and so much to be thankful for in this life that we should express our gratitude and remain contented. We must remember it's a folly to grieve over what you do not have without feeling content what we already have earned by honest labor. What we have to give up in life is only the sense of greed. With this renunciation comes the true enjoyment of the world. We must never forget that wealth in itself is totally innocent, but it's the insatiable desire in the minds of the foolish minds that plays the havoc every step of the way. So wealth is okay, but if you don't enjoy what you have earned yourself with hard work and still hope to get somebody else's, that is the problem. Adi Shankaracharya is warning all of us who want to desire to amass the wealth that such an individual is driven to various means, even unethical means, which can lead to dire consequences. Instead, we should recognize our true nature and remain content. How do we do that? Kurusvat buddhim manasi vitrishna. That means entertain our thought of Sat, that means Govinda. May you maintain the focus on the goal of life by giving up Trishna for Artha and wealth. When people say that they do not have time to worship God because they have so many other commitments, the commitments are not the main obstacle. The main obstacle is a misplaced order of priorities in their life. We have to keep Govinda in our mind, just as we keep our mind focused upon the deity in our heart in the right place, means on the right side as we circumambulate, called pradakshina, and let our mind not get distracted. That comes about when our mind is completely contented, free of craving for money and many other material things. I hope I made it clear about what pradakshina is. Pra, with forceful, concentrated, focused. Dakshina means on the right side. Dakshina is right. Vama is left. Dakshina is right. So when we do the circumambulation, we always go anti-clock. So we'll go from left to right, and on the right side is always the deity is in your heart. That's called pradakshina. That's circumambulation done in a exact correct way. So that is called pradakshina, and you have to keep our mind focused on the deity or God in the heart. And in this case, he's talking about Govinda. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Mudamate. I'm going to stop here right here and see if there are any comments or questions. I'm sure Prasanna would have some comments.
Thank you, Shashi. Samprapte sannihite kale nahi nahi rakshati dukram karane bhaja govindam bhaja mudamate. I think you mentioned it, which are 30 stanzas in Bhaja Govindam. The first stanzas were Adi Shankaracharya. It is also called Dvadasha Manjarika Stotram, a bouquet of 12 flowers. The 14 stanzas after that are one attributed to each of his disciples, and the last 4 stanzas are Adi Shankaracharya's. Total of 30 stanzas. Beautiful. You made exhaustive comments on bhaja, worship. I would just like to elaborate. There are 9 types of worship. Shravanam, listening to the glories of God. Kirtanam, singing the glories of God. Smaranam, constantly thinking about God. Padasevanam, adorning the feet of God. Archanam, worship via Vedic chantings. Vandanam, to pay obeisance to the Lord. Dasyam, serving the Lord. Sakhyam, to invoke him affectionately as a friend. Atmanivedanam, total self-surrender at his feet. But the essence, as you said, of bhaja is seva, service. Service of any kind to God, service to humanity is bhaja. So you very correctly pointed out the essence of bhaja is seva or service. We have to constantly remember that. In terms of the direct way that he talks about, it kind of scares you at the beginning. Scares you in the following way. You know, I have done all these studies of Vedas, Vedanta, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita. All that is down the drain now. It's of absolutely no use. So what am I going to do? But I think later on, as you pointed out, he says, those are essential, but that's not the aim of life. They're only the means to understand, to gain true knowledge and integrate that knowledge into your life. And that's the aim. Therefore, you cannot integrate that knowledge into your life if you don't have that knowledge. To gain that knowledge, you have to go through the Vedic scriptures and like Bhaja Govindam, Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, etc., etc. So reflection tells you that the effort that you have put in by listening to scholars, reading the books by scholars is not a waste of time. But what is a waste of time is to stop right there and not proceed any further. And that's exactly what your point is. Thank you.
Now, I was very inspired by this presentation, and I was much reminded of a letter that the founder of the high school that I attended wrote that became the credo of the school was back in the 1930s.
Mhm.
He was a Jewish physician who turned away from medical practice to teaching children. And he wrote these words: I believe that it is happiness to act so as to give pleasure to others, to live in accord with our own conscience, to love so that others will be benefited and none injured by our love, to work for the joy of work, expecting and receiving the financial rewards of our work as our due, but not our motive, to play, dance, sing, and read for the joy that is each of these activities. I believe that sorrow and joy come to each of us, that though these are not evenly distributed, we learn in joy and in sorrow so to live that the world is better for our having lived, and that is our happiness. And it seems to me that this is so in line with the message you delivered. And what is striking to me is that this man was an atheist, was a humanist, a very thoughtful person. He devoted his life to the welfare of others, and he was simply not concerned with religious or spiritual questions. So it's another path, is it not?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's so powerful. I appreciate it. The thing is, that's the beauty about Hinduism. As you understand the Hindu philosophy, we accept from one end of atheism to all the way to theistic dualism. We accept when they are going to see His grace. I mean, we use from A to Z. So everybody is welcome. Everybody can use their own method, but ultimately it is the own understanding of life, and most importantly, how to live the life by serving others. If you gain the knowledge as a physician, and if you don't serve the patients, your life is worthless. For example, when both of us are physicians, now we are retired after reaching a certain age, and we did not know who paid us and who did not pay. We work because we're privileged to jump out of the bed early in the morning and be at work at 7 o'clock in the morning and help the people who are in need. And it was such a pleasure for both of us that we enjoyed our life fully. And when we got into medicine, because our parents showed by their own example how you can be still remembered several years after you're gone, the community still remembers you for the service that you gave. Not simply medical service, but the service to serve the humanity. For example, my grandfather would go to the families, because at that time house calls was normal, walk in the house, examine the patient, write a prescription, and if he saw there was a poverty in the house, not only not send any bills, but leave the money in the house. And the family will recognize it a little later, who left the money back. So when I had a chance to visit the same village a few years later, before I decided what profession I would take, when I came to that village, in the morning walks, people will come run out of the house and ask if I was the grandson of that Dr. Sane. And when I had a chance to answer them, yes, I was, they invited me in their homes, asked me some pleasantries and questions, but the rest of the hour was spent talking about him. So the beauty of any profession that one pursues, it should be given up, addressed to serving others. And whatever comes by your hard work, that's a God's grace. Because very important to remember that we sometimes forget what we've already been given by God and complain because some of the things that we do not have. I'll tell you a story. Stories is my main part of my life. Is one guy goes to his teacher, spiritual teacher. He said, I'm unhappy because I need $1 million. That would make me really happy. Can you give me? You are my guru. He said, I can arrange for that. But in that, you have to give something back in return. Tell me what it is. I'll do anything that you want. Well, I want you to give me your vision. I want to give me your eyes. Oh, and that I cannot give. How about cutting off your both hands and feet and give it to me? I'll give $1 million right now. And he went step by step about different things which were part of his life, what things he had, how blessed he was in general in his life. He came to realize that he has so much to thankful for in his life. He's trying to aspire something else that he did not need. So sometimes somebody has to remind each one of us how lucky we are where we are. To me, the most important thing which I'll conclude on is we are born as human beings. Every other entity is born and works on instincts. We have given the free will, the capacity to make choices in our lives, to do or not to do a good thing or not to do things, serve others or not. So we are given that choice, which is a unique thing. And as Master Shankaracharya was teaching us, let's not waste this life. Use this life to learn as to who we really are, learn our true identity, and come to live it. And that comes with that knowledge, understanding, and serving others as we enjoy our life. There's nothing wrong in enjoying life. It's been done with clear understanding that we cannot enjoy ourselves without helping others at the same time. Thank you for making that comment.